Hello everyone and welcome back to the Quake Pro League. We are going to head into our fourth match between Cooler and Tox with Flea once again. And Flea, I think this is going to be another engagement which should be an absolute slobber knocker here. And, it should be a very close one between these two titans.
Absolutely. I think this is one of the games that a lot of the viewers will have been waiting for until we get to this point, and here it is at long last. You've got Cooler, the mythical Cooler, the man who put his name on the championship belt at the end of the Stage 2 finals, and then of course we've got toxjq, the Terminator, one of the greatest legends of Quake all time, really, just because of his calm demeanor and his incredible lightning gun aim. So this is definitely a matchup for the ages, and I think it's very difficult to call. If we look at their match history, Cooler so far has won 3 out of 4 engagements in the Quake Pro League, but the most recent one, which was at the Stage 3 finals, actually went toxjq's way pretty convincingly too. So this really could go either way.
It really could. You're talking about toxjq's tracking aim. I completely agree. I think a lot of the pros would say, but he's got one of the best LGs on the circuit. This is a man you've got to be extremely careful with in close combat, no matter what situation you're in. A very, very good player. He was on form quite recently, quite a few weeks ago. A little bit on and off here and there, but it all depends on who he's actually facing, who he's actually up against, depending on what style of play he has. And we know he's incredibly talented. His accuracy and his aim skill is just very, very good across the board. And he's very hard to stop. He is the sort of player where to try and at least punish him in any way, you've got to be a lot more methodical in terms of your thought process compared to any other opponent.
Absolutely, but toxjq, it always depends on the Tox that you're getting, right? He is such a great player, but he can also be so inconsistent, and we very often see him make some pretty grave mistakes, I feel like, when he just gets carried away. And I think that is one of his biggest weaknesses. Sometimes he just lets the aggression, the in-game aggression, of course, kind of get to him a bit too much. And then he will be down, he'll drop a frag, and he's just like, okay, I'm going to go right back in. I'm going to go for the shot. Yeah, I'm railable, but I'm still going to take the risk. And then he drops 1 frag, 2, 3, 4, and before you know it, all of a sudden, his opponent is 5 frags ahead, and toxjq is like, well, okay, now I have 3 minutes left, and all of a sudden, this one short minute cost me so many frags. So sometimes I feel like toxjq is just, he needs to mitigate that aggression a bit more. And I think we've seen more of that during Stage 3, especially during the Stage 3 finals, which was a pretty damn good run for Tox. So I think he should be able to do that. But of course, he's up against none other than Cooler himself, the man from Russia, an absolute monster in his own right. Incredible player, known by quite a few nicknames, including the likes of Pac-Man, just because of how good he is at stealing every single item on the map and making sure that his opponent has nothing to work with whatsoever.
I kind of feel like with Cooler, no matter what position he's put himself in when he forces out a engagement in any way which he tries to execute, if he was a Monopoly board or he had like a chance card, he would have like a get out of jail free card, because literally every single time he puts himself in a position where he has to take a fight in any way into it, and no matter what opponent it is, he always manages to find another route to be able to get away from. Always thinks about it like 2 steps ahead every single time. You see an element of aggression from him, but he's always got like a second chance, trying to get away in any way he can. So I think his routes and paths and what he does in terms of rotations is very, very good. And, I'm not going to say that his tracking aim is as good as Tox's, but, he's probably one of the next best ones there.
Oh, absolutely. Like Cooler, I think his positioning and just his placement and his movement around the map is absolutely one of his strongest attributes. He understands the game so well, and as you mentioned, has got so many routes, not only to escape, but also to catch his opponent off guard. And just when you're going up against a player like Cooler, it feels like he's everywhere at all times. You struggle to get even the slightest little edge, even a small armor at times, or a railgun. It can feel like a near impossible task just because he has such a commanding presence on the map, and you can absolutely never be sure what angle he's going to come from next. So Cooler is a formidable opponent, one of the privileged few in the Quake Pro League that managed to put their name on the championship belt and take home the finals in one of the absolute, the stages so far. So toxjq definitely has a tremendous challenge cut out for him today.
Yeah, toxjq's mechanics is phenomenal. Both these players have such a large amount of raw talent behind them. As we go into the picks and bans, looks like Corrupted Keep and the Covenant will be banned first. First map will be on Ruins, and let's be real, between these two, I'm not surprised we're seeing the blood run. If I didn't see it, I would have been very surprised. And then we will be going to Molten Falls to finish things off. I've seen quite a lot of Molten Falls so far. But what's your take on the champion picks and how things which could possibly pan out here, Flea?
Ruins of Sarnath is an interesting one. So the first map of the bunch, because Anarchy has got a tremendous amount of speed, but on the one hand, everyone knows Ruins is a difficult map to play when you're a small champion, because if you get out of control, it's such a risk to pick up these small armor since they're so open and exposed that it can be very difficult. And on the other hand, Toxic, this is a really good map to hide totems on, as when you're playing as Galena. So coollerz is gonna put in a lot of effort to make sure Toxic doesn't get too many of those on the board. And the second map will be Bloodrun, the Ranger versus, of course, the Stroke, so that's momentum versus the utility of the orb, and then finally Molten Falls, Visor, lots of information, helps out tremendously on a map that size against the Eisen, which is someone who don't see picked all that often in the Quake Pro League.
I think I've only seen Eisen chosen on Molten Falls probably once or twice, and most of the time it's more for feeding information. There wasn't really much damage done. For example, if you're contesting the heavy, or maybe, for example, you're contesting heavy, but at the same time the mega's coming up around the same time or very shortly, normally the turret there will give enough info to know what he's going for and what he could be doing. But he might have other aces up his sleeve playing as Eisen and Molten Falls. But we are going to go to our first map of the fourth match. It will be on Ruins, and coollerz will be the first one that we'll be paying attention to, as already he's managed to get the Mega first and already got behind Tox, but decided to back away for now to continue getting all the weapons in his arsenal.
It's going to be interesting to see how coollerz will use the injection. You see some players just pop it basically as soon as they have that ability available, just to increase their overall stack over time, and it really does add up towards the end of a map. Or if he's just going to hang on to it more and only pop it when he really needs it during these engagements. He's just going to take down the first totem with his face. Absolutely no care in the world right there. Doesn't want to pick up Mega because he knows he's got so much health to begin with. He would rather just fight with Tox first a bit so that he still has that item to retreat back on. Nice little fly by rail. Toxic unable to return in kind. And now coollerz, he knows he's got a sizable stack advantage. And he should be able to hang on to this rotation that he's got going on. There's 15 seconds between the two items. Perfect to just string one after another and stay in control.
It gives coollerz more intention to actually prioritize the items more than the engagement, depending on how weak Tox is. But Tox, fair enough, with the nail gun, at least trying to keep him at bay. But nice nail shots, a nice rail as well to back up. And looks like coollerz desperately looking to take this fight, but Tox with another rail of his own. The injection comes in for coollerz and decides to back away, get ready for the next heavy, because he knows the Mega is quite a bit more delayed compared to what it was before. But at least later on, it will be the Mega then heavy rotation, as long as he keeps that top control. Shotgun comes through. coollerz only on 102 HP. Tox is on a very similar stack. But so far, quite surprised we haven't seen the first frag on the board yet, Flea.
Yeah, and that was a really good decision from coollerz to back away right there. If he had chased his opponent, Toxic would have just been able to jump right down the jump pad and get that first positioning onto the heavy. The rockets are sublime, though. Coollerz definitely wasn't expecting to take that much damage, and now he's in trouble once again. Careful. Almost ran into the totem around the corner. Good thing he chose to go through the teleporter instead, but that could have spelled disaster as Toxic lands some beautiful rockets to get himself on the board first. 1-0. And now Toxic stringing along a Mega as well. coollerz just seems hell-bent on taking down totems with his face. Oh, so close, so close. A few centimeters to the left, or the right rather, and that would have been a kill for Toxic with the totem.
You're not wrong there about going face first into a lot of these totems. He's just not expecting them to be in these certain areas, but looks like Toxic's going to be pushing straight through. Rightly so, cleans them up with the LG.
I actually feel like the totem right there got him the frag, because you saw coollerz look at it, but he realized if he shoots the shotgun now to take down that totem, Toxic will be on him before he can fire again. So he kind of held on to the shot, turned back around, and that just allowed Toxic to maneuver himself in a really good position for the rockets. So expert play from Toxic right there, extending his lead 2-0 for the time being.
He's found two of the totems, but it looks like one of them is still standing, but at least coollerz knows the location of where it's going to be. 3 minutes 30 has passed. Tox is up 2-0. coollerz still trying to figure out what he can do to try and retaliate in some way. Has had some item control in this game, but not a lot. Actually, funny enough, Tox is the one who's only had 3 heavies, 1 mega, and coollerz is the one with the item control, but it's not done anything with it at this moment in time. Even though Tox has been at a disadvantage quite a lot of the game, he's been able to make a comeback here. But this isn't Tox's time to face up against coollerz, as coollerz trying to hold top mid, trying to make sure he gets ready for the next mega, which he will do shortly, and both will be contesting for that heavy. But as I said, that the rocket comes through, coollerz going to try and challenge it if he can. The LG comes out and Tox decides to back away, gets the rail, doesn't get the chance to shoot a second one, and Tox is finally been taken down as coollerz gets the first and then gets the second. Phenomenal stuff from coollerz.
And he's got to get the read of the spawn once again. Knows exactly where toxjq is. Gotta dance away from the gauntlet. And just like that, in barely 30 seconds, coollerz putting himself in the lead. A very quick reversal of the roles right there. And I think this has a lot to do with just his damage stepping up. You mentioned yourself, toxjq had most of the, or coollerz rather had most of the items, and still toxjq was in the lead. How is that possible? Well, that was possible because toxjq had 1200 damage as opposed to coollerz 600. So literally twice as much damage done, but coollerz right now just reversing that in full, and he's almost tied in damage dealt. So really a complete turnaround right there from the Russian madman, bringing it to the Terminator.
Second half into the map, as coollerz is now going to passively wait for the heavy for the time being, which he managed to grab. But it's the perfect item rotations. Both items are about 11 to 12 seconds apart, so it gives coollerz enough time to keep that map control and keep the items at the same time. Tox, though, looking to try and jeopardize that, decides to back away for now. Let him have the mega, fight for another day, and see what he can do against heavy. It's a lot more difficult playing against someone who's stacked fighting for the heavy. You can tell that Tox is more looking for that mega control to see if he can at least get some chip damage and then push on from there.
The totems also haven't really been working out all that well for toxjq. Yes, he's had them up a bunch of the times, but is really not able to turn it into that 3-stack, to get that overheal going for him. Even if coollerz just consistently walks by that one totem at the bottom of the stairs toward teleporter, I can't believe how many times he just walked right on past it. Still, toxjq unable to really make the most out of the totems, at least when it comes to adding his stack up. Now coollerz knows exactly where toxjq is. Aggressive push, shotgun, will finish off his opponent, but he took quite a bit of damage in return. Now toxjq, actually the one with the stack advantage. He should have timing on Mega as well, but doesn't have position to challenge for that item just yet.
Yeah, it's like I said earlier, it's a lot more difficult to challenge for the heavy when you're understacked compared to it is for the Mega. I can understand why Tox is more complacent and waiting for the Mega. Again, coollerz, another couple of very good rails.
Same spots, same shots, works out nicely. Can he do it again? No, he just barely misses on getting yet another frag in that exact situation. toxjq, what are you doing? So aggressive! Absolutely no regard for his personal safety, no restraint. And that's what I was talking about. Sometimes that aggressive playstyle just catches up with toxjq. Here he goes again. Nice. Finally do land some of the rails that he needs. coollerz does manage to escape though. Is this the start of a comeback? toxjq knows he's got so much work cut out for him though.
coollerz has definitely been making it hard for Tox here. Another rail comes through. Tox is looking for the second, but he's going to try and chase him down anyway. coollerz with his defensive rockets to try and keep him at bay. No damage is done. Surely Tox is so tempted to try and clean things up, which he doesn't. coollerz just saving that injection for the time being, but has walked into a little bit of a sticky situation there as he was trying to go for the light. But he won't be getting that light armor as he gets to heavy anyway.
coollerz just knew that he had a pretty decent idea of where toxjq was, and he didn't want to use the injection even though he was railable. He was like 3 points of health under being railable. And the moment he runs into Tox, he pops it because he knows that could spell the end. toxjq once again clean shut down. coollerz perfect read, catches a glimpse of his opponent and then uses that better positioning and just waits just lets Toxic run right into his hands to get yet another frag. And now 6 frags of a deficit for Toxic with just 1 minute and 30 seconds to go. Cooler even whipping out a few 360 spins right there. He clearly is confident in his ability to drive this one home all the way.
Didn't know Cooler was a gymnast, but we do now with the 360 jumps around the bounce pad, having a bit of a giggle. But it doesn't matter anyway, as Tox has finally ended his little spree. And has only got 1 minute left to try and get 5 frags. Now, he managed to get 2. So still got 4 left remaining if you can catch him on spawn, but Cooler has already managed to get away. But I say that, it could catch him off guard. He needs to hit these rails. One more should do it. Make sure trying to pull out the LG on the rockets. He's still missing these shots. And Cooler's literally standing still. He's not even strafing. He's just being very cautious with his shots. Finally, Tox had taken him down. But there's only 35 seconds left remaining here, Fleet, and he still needs 3 frags.
I mean, it's the infamous Cooler dodge. The best dodge is just not to dodge at all and allow your opponent to over-aim. That's something that Cooler has said in the past. It's very well known for this interesting strategy. Why move when you can just stand still and have your opponent just try to read what you're going to do next and flick to the left or the right, and you just stand there stone still and let him miss all of the shots. Toxic, good attempt at making the comeback happen, but I think that Cooler knew that it wasn't possible at all. So that is going to be map 1 going to Cooler, taking this one home 8-6 in the end. It was a pretty close matchup for at least the first few minutes. Toxic had a good lead, but then there was that one moment where Cooler just chained together 3 frags instantly and set himself up for a really good rotation afterwards.
That was a great match. Tox slowly coming with that comeback, but it was just a little bit too late in the end. You saw there with the item control, only 4 items apiece for both the heavy and the mega each, which is, not very good. You saw from there, we know what runes is like. It's very hard to contest a heavy when you're understacked. Sometimes it's best to try and go for the telly or try and wait around the rocket spawn to at least get some rares in, at least because it's such an open area. It's probably the best opportunity for you to at least get enough chip damage in so you can contest the heavy afterwards. But it wasn't really given many options, in all fairness.
Yeah. No, absolutely not. Cooler played that so nicely for the second half of the game. I mentioned at the beginning, right? Cooler, he's known as a constrictor, known as the Pac-Man, because he can just exert such an amount of pressure on his opponent, no matter where you are. And I think we saw that with those phenomenal rail frags, right? He gets the read of Toxic, bam, 1 rail, oh, you're gonna try to leave the room? No. This is a nice and open map. You have nowhere to hide if you make that move. And another one, just constantly applying that kind of pressure. And Cooler did that twice in a row. So that just adds up over time, and Toxic, in the end, just got completely choked off the map, as it were.
Yeah, it was a stomping ground for Cooler throughout the first 3 quarters of that game. You saw he stabilised halfway through and managed to make sure that Tox didn't have much opportunity to even catch up or even try and tie things up. But Cooler, though, did a phenomenal job. Tox did everything he could. He wasn't really given the opportunities he was so badly grasped. But even then, though, Cooler, with a few good rails here and there, managed to keep him at bay. But you saw there Tox as well also tried to even contest some of the lights, and Cooler wasn't even expecting it. You saw as well, Cooler is a little bit, what's the phrase we're looking for? Probably a little bit too elegant in terms of like what he wanted to do at the end. He kind of gave too many frags away. I think he felt like he could have traded off quite well, but instead I think he felt like there wasn't nowhere near enough time for Tox to even tie things up, let alone take the lead. So it wasn't really much of a risk. He just knew that the match was already said and done in the final 90 seconds.
Yeah, this should be an interesting one, though, because we are getting to see Toxic play the Struck, who, of course, has the crouch sliding, and as everyone knows, that is the Terminator's bread and butter. Back in the day, Quake 4 widely considered to be the best Quake 4 player of all time, and that, of course, was the game that introduced this mechanic to the series. So watching Tox just slip and slide around the map is truly a wonderful sight to behold. But on the other hand, it is Blood Run, and it is a difficult map to use that mechanic on well.
So we will be heading into the second map. And you're not wrong, though, with Tox, when he uses Strog or Slash or Anarchy, anything like that, we are really in for a real treat.
Oh.
But Cooler's already taken so much damage, and the chase is on. Tox is after blood already, and it's only been the first 15 seconds of the game, but surely he's going to take any more. Cooler backs away. Tox was on his tail throughout the entire time, and he's still chasing him down as Cooler finally puts a stop to the massacre Tox was trying to occur. And now up 1-0.
That's what I was talking about at the start. The aggression from toxjq, sometimes so misplaced. Like, yeah, he had a really good start to begin with, but then afterwards, once coollerz was out of the room, still chasing, knowing that you have to push through several choke points where your opponent's got a railgun just waiting for you to show your face, that is just far too risky. And then coollerz lands a few of these shots, and all of a sudden toxjq realizes, oh wow, I'm caught out here in the middle of nowhere, I can't get back easily, and coollerz is out stacking me massively right now.
Sure is, as the rockets come back and forth. Nice combo rocket rail there from coollerz. Tox just barely managing to stay alive, but he knows exactly where he is in that nail room, dropping down to the LG. Oh, that was disgusting rail from coollerz. And now he's going to try and go for the spawn trap again. Just barely misses, but that was absolute filth.
Oh my god, this is... coollerz is just absolutely kicking things up a notch right there with these kinds of shots and these kinds of plays that is so difficult to pull off. Now toxjq, he's at risk here. His opponent goes for the item, but the flick rail will allow him to stay alive, staving off that 3-0 lead. toxjq though, his rails are looking sharp. He's got to be careful. Does manage to steal away the heavy, but he will go down once again. Over-aggressive, exerting himself a bit too much, putting himself too far out in the middle of the room, and coollerz is going to just take advantage of that.
In terms of mindset, the phrase "he's feeling it" is definitely an understatement. coollerz on form with not just the rail, but the predictive rockets as well, just making sure that he's being kept at bay, and coollerz just on the actual warpath here. He's doing so much, getting the item control. The LG comes through. Sandy gets taken down finally, but the damage has already been done. coollerz up 2 frags at the moment. Tox leaning behind, but he's got the strog, so you've got to remember that he does have more room for opportunities, a wider variety of strategies to try and pincer coollerz if he can. But we know how difficult Blood Run can be here, Flea.
toxjq had no business winning that previous fight.
No.
Nailgun versus LG at that range should have 100% gone towards coollerz, but somehow the nails just homed into his opponent, and it allowed toxjq to still, out of nowhere, get the frag. coollerz setting up a bit of a trap. Rockets raining down from above, doing 0 damage in total, and the LG from coollerz standing his ground. Such powerful aim from the Russian. This is incredible right now.
coollerz got to be careful. He decides to get out of there with the orb. I don't think he even wanted to waste the orb. He wanted to save it for another fight, but instead he had absolutely no choice. Back to 91 HP. The heavy is up, but Tox is coming straight in with the LG. Cleans him up nicely. So weak at that moment in time. And Tox now needs to try and regain his default stack as the first round misses. Going to try and go for the second. Missed the second as well. But the peek it comes through. Doesn't really do too much yet. But at least he's kept coollerz at bay for the time being.
Yeah, he had to crash the peeker quickly too, because he realized that if coollerz dodged to the right a bit more, he would have just caught sight of toxjq, the actual Strock, sitting motionlessly on the stairs. That it would have made him a very easy target. So toxjq had to destroy the peeker right there. Nice little rail, but takes one in return. This is difficult for Tox. He needed to land that shot to have any chance at securing himself the Mega right here. He's just dodging out of the room, though. Rail isn't cutting it. And coollerz will take that opportunity to secure himself Mega. Delaying it quite nicely at first, though, so he should have a pretty nice rotation for the next items.
He should be okay as Tox now is just trying to feed himself info. Mostly gets the damage done too. The first rail misses, but decides not to take that fight. But it looks like coollerz got other ideas. He will be taking it and increases his lead 6-3. Still got plenty of time now here, Flea. Still got 5 minutes 10. The Mega is being contested. We're going to have to see how Tox is going to go about this. That is definitely not the right way as the LG comes through. And coollerz extends his lead.
toxjq is just, he's taking too many risks. Lethal, that is what this is. We talked about it, we were worried about it before we got into the game even, but he's just pushing so aggressively, counting on coollerz to miss these rails, but coollerz is just not missing. He's landing these shots, punishing toxjq so much before he can get anywhere close to his opponent. And that is what allows coollerz to now have a commanding 4-frag lead as we have entered the second half of this map. Still absolutely doable, far from impossible, But this is, of course, Blood Run, one of the most defendable maps in the entire roster. So if coollerz just absolutely slams on the brakes and holds things down, it is going to be so difficult for his opponent toxjq to put a dent into that.
It's going to be extremely difficult for toxjq. 4 frags on a map like this, very, very difficult to say the least. coollerz now needs to back away, and it looks like tox did predict him to go straight through the telly, but instead as he pick up the heavy and is on the hunt. He's on the chase. He knows he's down there, but wasn't really too sure whether and when he should drop down. But coollerz managed to stand his ground. Tox still heavily stacked. It looks like they will be meeting each other, and Tox so desperately needs his frag, and he does. So slowly but surely, he's dropped the deficit only by 1 frag, and still got plenty of time to try and make something happen here.
Yeah, 3.5 minutes left to go. He can absolutely take his time. He just needs to ensure that coollerz stack is called every so often. He can't allow coollerz to just set up in one of the more defendable passive parts of the map. And there we go, coollerz just zips on by, steals away Mega. toxjq, his worst fear realized right there. That is going to be tricky now. Its opponent getting a good amount of stack. I don't know about this one, Harry. Especially after that one.
No, not at all. No, I think that's the worst thing is when you're using the Pika to feed out some info or get a bit of damage done, then you're instantly gonna know where they're coming from. The rocket comes through, he's trying to hit that rail straight afterwards, but sadly doesn't clean things up. Gets the heavy anyway, does a little bit more damage to Tox. Tox drops down straight away, and the orb just to finish things off. That was disgusting from coollerz.
It never gets old now, does it? Seeing the orb come through, especially those long-range orbs. That wasn't an easy shot at all. Beautiful, beautiful placement from coollerz right there. And then just the patience for the exact right time when toxjq has to get close and within reach of the explosion. And that is when he pops the ability and finishes him off.
Not far from wrongfully as coollerz decides to extend his lead once more, and still 2 minutes and 5 seconds left. Tox will at least have to get something done now. It's just going to be too little too late, but these rails and the shotgun to boot from coollerz has just been next to none. His aim has just been phenomenal. He's been feeling it throughout the course of this entire map. This is one of his hometowns, of course, and we know how much he enjoys Blood Run, definitely one of his better maps. And he's really showing it here with the precision of his aim, the movement he's making. His DLG will just barely come through, and now 12 to 4 with 1 minute and 30 left remaining here, Flea.
I mean, it's over and done with by now. It's mathematically impossible for toxjq to get that many frags in this little time. Of course, it's not going to stop him from trying. He wants to at least get himself back into fighting shape for the final map. But he knows that this is over. He knows that this is done. The only thing he can do right now is try to not let it get to him. He still wants those frags. He still wants to deny coollerz that bonus of getting a 3-0 victory as well. So toxjq still has an opportunity of securing at least 1 map out of 3.
That's right, indeed. The most important thing is just to reset his mentality going into map number 3. Just take it on the chin for now. We know how well coollerz's been doing for the whole entire course of this map. But even on runes, though, his rails were just phenomenal. Tox is still trying to make something happen, but he knows it's all said and done. It's way too late. And it was a good effort, though. He tried to show a lot more aggression to try and catch coollerz off guard. But like you said before, he was hoping, he was trying to bait out the rails, but instead coollerz was hitting every single one and always pushed himself at a disadvantage every time he made the assumption that coollerz wouldn't be able to hit these shots. The shotgun comes in, another orb kill there. 14 to 5 with 15 seconds remaining.
I think that the key takeaway here is just toxjq being too aggressive, just getting carried away by chasing down his opponent a bit too often. It started that way, it looks like it's going to end that way as well, but there were just too many situations, like that very first frag, Lethal. toxjq gets the better engagement to start with. He does most of the damage. coollerz is pretty damn low at that time. What does toxjq do? He doesn't have railgun at this point, and he knows that his opponent does have it, and he tries to chase. He goes up the bounce pad, Cooler lands a long distance rail. He goes down the stairs, Cooler lands another rail. And by that point, all of a sudden, Toxic has next to nothing next to his name in terms of stack. And Cooler is like, well, by now I managed to pick up 4 health bubbles again and a small armor. So please do come at me, bro. And that's just all that she wrote. That was the end of it. So Toxic, too aggressive, getting carried away, trying to secure that frag when he could have just turned right back around, got himself a railgun, got himself a rotation going. But no, the chase is what killed him in return, and we saw that happen time and time again during this map.
The only thing I can say good about Tox is the fact that he had much better item control. That's the only thing I can take away from it. And you're right, though, like sometimes you just got to force your opponent to stabilize and just relax for a bit and then to continue on to decide what you want to do. But I know what Tox is like. You know, I think we all know what he's like as a player. He's the one who wants to force out the mistake. He's the one who wants to try and make Cooler feel as uncomfortable as possible. But look at that. He's just sitting there quite passively, just making sure to see exactly where Tox is going to go, listening out for those audio cues every time, and just chilling and making sure every shot's hit. Cooler wasn't really playing too methodical in that kind of way, just letting Tox come to him every single time in most of the narrow corridors, and Tox was just putting him at a disadvantage every single time without fail. And it was a real shame, really, because we know what Tox is like. He's a very, very good player, but we know what Cooler's like too. He always makes himself sure that he's got a second life by making sure he's in a position where he can make the move to get away or keep his opponent, making sure it's always a 50-50 engagement in terms of what route or what path he's going to take on Blood Run. But we'll have to see what happens in map number 3 now, because with Tox, we can't see him play like how he did just then.
Yeah, no, absolutely. If he does that, he will be dismantled in the exact same way. And as we are loading into the final map of this series, I just want to think back about that rail. Lethal, that rail through the grate over on Mega, my goodness. Usually, you already shout it out when that happens with a rocket. Yeah. But this was a railgun. You need that pinpoint accuracy, that instant response time. And Cooler just pulled it off as if it was nothing. A beautiful play. If that doesn't end up in the highlights, then I don't know what possibly would.
Yeah, normally most people would fire a rocket just to get a little bit of damage done, or just to show them that there's a bit of map presence there, or I know the timing of it. Just kind of like their way of saying certain things. But the fact that he just let him bounce away and then just rail him like that was just ridiculous. Maybe he knew he was railable, so he thought it was worth the opportunity. I'm not sure, but yeah, that was pretty hilarious, and it's definitely going to be one of the top clips, 100%, because there's no way. You don't really see that kind of position with the rail too often, though, do we? But we will be going into map number 3 very shortly. It will be on Molten Falls to see who actually manages to take it in the end. And we'll be starting off straight away with Cooler to see what he's going to be up to. He's going to get a few weapons in his arsenal and just delay the Mega as much as he can.
Mega, and both Mega and Heavy actually being delayed to the point that there's no delay whatsoever. Both players waiting around 15 seconds before picking it up, and in turn making it spawn at the exact same time. So no advantages either way. Cooler, of course, he's got that piercing sight. That's a lot of information that he can get from that ability. He knows exactly where his opponent is right now. He's going to shoot the pillar, unfortunately for him. But that is going to add up nicely. Toxic right now in a bad position already. Doesn't have much health to work with. The Cooler will take that opportunity to put himself onto the Heavy. But he knows that he's too slow. Mega won't be going his way.
At least he knows now, but there isn't really too much of a gap for that Mega, but the shotgun comes through. Not too much damage there, sadly, for Cooler, as Tox with the LG. We talk about his tracking aim time and time again. Remarkable, but then again, Cooler comes through. Doesn't matter too much. Tox is left on 2 HP, 50 armor. Very, very lucky to get away with that. But a nice way to get things started. But that was a beautiful rocket to start things off in that third engagement. Takes the turret down, and now Cooler's the one with the stack lead, but not the score lead as of yet.
Toxic, for the first time this series, starting things off with a frag lead. See if he can actually hold on to it. A lot of work ahead of him, so we're only in the very early stages of this map. Heavy will be the first item to spawn, and it's actually Cooler who's got the better positioning on it. Should be able to stop Toxic right there, and at this point Toxic knows he has to surrender that next item. He can't possibly get around, and he also can't push through that choke point. Cooler, again, leaving up the item, knowing that he might well take damage and trying to fend Toxic off, so he wanted to first engage and then still have something to fall back on. So LG on LG, Cooler definitely has the better stacks. Gotta be careful with the turret though. Nearly going down, but he does manage to tie things up again.
Ooh, and then Tox with a rail of his own. That tie was very short-lived, as both these players are constantly trying to trade each other off, but Tox, so surely can take this. Yes, he will, and another nice rail from Tox once again. Back to that 2-frag lead, and he needs this map win. Even though he's 2-0 down in the series, every point counts in the standings as we head into the second half of Stage 4. So Tox is desperate to try and get this map win if he can off Cooler, as he pushes straight through. Some great damage there, did 175 at least from those first 2 rockets, but Cooler is the one who wins that engagement. He's going to come through again, he's going to try and get the trade. One more rail should do it, misses the last one, but the LG from Tox is after blood, knows exactly where he is, hasn't got the height advantage, but it's going to drop down for him anyway. Tox manages to win the next one, back to 2-frag differential.
That was an extremely confident play from Cooler. Almost went his way as well. He left up the small armor and just pushed in, just hoping to do damage on toxjq off the spawn as his opponent was making his way over to LG. And he did manage to land a few shots right there. But in the end, even picking up the heavy couldn't prepare him for the damage that toxjq brought to the table. The LG right there, perfect. And Cooler working his way ever closer to his opponent. It's interesting to see how Molten, which is usually not that explosive a map, is actually turning out to be faster than games we've seen on Blood Run so far. 5-5 in not even 4 minutes? This is an aggressive game.
Well, I do love a little bit of chaos here and there, Fleet, but it looks like Cooler's going to be waiting for the drop down on Tox, manages to stay alive and has gone from down 3-5 up 6-5 now. Gets to heavy as well to make matters worse for Tox. Both on a slightly similar stack. Who is coming through, will get the Mega as well just to make matters worse. Tox drops down for him, gets railed, but gets railed again a second time round. Cooler doing what he does best.
Why are you there, Tox? You had no reason to be. 2 rails would have killed you. You know that your opponent has the better stack. You know that he has the piercing sight. I get that he wants to do damage on the item, but that was just such an unnecessary life he threw away. Luckily for him, he instantly manages to get a refrag on the heavy though, but still, toxjq, he has to be careful with those random acts of aggression.
I know what you mean though. Some of the decisions he's making is debatable, 100%, but the LG comes through for Tox. A lot of damage done. He's trying to look for that rail. He needs to take some kind of risk, which he does. Cooler's so weak at this point. He's going to try and push down for him if he can. He gets the rail off anyway. Cooler's just surviving with his life at this point. Finally gets taken down. Tox tying things up.
Mega will be the next item to spawn. Cooler makes the wise decision not to go for it straight away because he's missing weaponry. Loops back around for the LG, the rocket jump coming through. toxjq absolutely caught with his pants down right there. Not ready for the rocket jump one bit. I think Cooler was completely ready to give up the item too when he moved back to get LG. But toxjq just wasn't in position to take it first.
He definitely wasn't, but that 100 damage from that first rocket is definitely not going to help him in any way as Cooler... Tox must be on at least 1 HP. I need to quickly check. Yes, he is. 1 HP exactly. And Cooler's going to be kicking himself a little bit there, knowing that he was able to get away. But for now, though, both of them are very small distance from each other as Cooler's looking for that first rail, but it's not to be for now. But at least Cooler still has the lead with 4 minutes remaining.
I am surprised that Cooler didn't force that situation further. Turret comes out this time, Cooler takes it down instantly. Good rockets from below. toxjq has no business sticking around. He knows he has to leave. After taking that amount of damage, he cannot reasonably contest a fight with a stacked Cooler who has both the Mega and the Heavy to his name. I'm loving the rocket jumps out of Cooler right now. toxjq just thinks that he's in a position of relative safety and is expecting Cooler to just maybe walk down below towards the teleporter, but absolutely no such thing happens. Immediately, Cooler just goes for those aggressive rocket jumps after picking up the items, and toxjq has no answer for it.
Now, that's definitely one way to at least catch him off guard. As Cooler gets another rail, he's going to try and look for the second one, but decides to back away for the time being as the turret came down. Cooler, though, back to default stack. He's now on... managed to picking up the Mega for now, as Cooler knows the exact whereabouts of Tox. He's going to be diving straight in to make sure... doesn't give him much room to breathe, try and put the pressure on and making sure he can contest to Heavy at the best of his ability. But I think he feels like now he's in a great spot, uses a piercing sight just to double check and see exactly where Tox is. He will find him above the Mega. But it's going to be quite difficult now. As long as he keeps his shots on, he should be fine. But not if Tox keeps doing all his chip damage. He was the exact damage to be reliable. One more should do it for Tox, but he's left it a little bit too late as coollerz has picked up the rail. So desperate to try and charge in here, but he's got to do something soon because only 2 minutes 20 left on the clock here, Flea.
Damage between these players is pretty much equal, but it's coollerz who has most of the item pickups, and you can clearly see it. He can allow himself to land, or left some of these shots land on him rather, and still be in perfect fighting shape for the next item. And that is just because he's controlling the items so well. Click goes the rail. toxjq will take advantage of that, just push on through the teleporter. It's a 1-frag game with 2 minutes to go. toxjq absolutely has tremendous possibility to bring this one back still.
He definitely can. He hasn't had much item control throughout this game, but as soon as he does, that's where we could see a change in shift. The LG comes out for Tox, and of course he cleans him up during that LG battle, but it's got to make sure to try and restabilize if he can in terms of his stack and what he wants to do. He is looking to try and contest the Mega, but which was going to do it though? He's leaving him behind for now. Eventually he's going to let coollerz get it, and this is where he's going to have to back off for the time being. coollerz did a great job. Just keep him back for the time, and now Heavy's back up again. Does a nice chunk of damage with the rocket. Misses the first rail, gets the second one, misses the third. He's going to try and get the fourth, which he does, and was so tempted to go for the next one, but due to the fire rate of the rail, he couldn't actually pull it off. But so far, so good so far. A minute left, but at least they've tied things up.
This might as well be sudden death. Both players know this. Rocket will send toxjq flying backwards. He's out of rockets. I hope he's aware of this, because we all know the infamous toxjq click, trying to fire without any ammo in his weapon. It has cost him a bunch of frags. He's caught out in a bad spot, and coollerz just absolutely rushes in and takes it. Don't quite know why toxjq stuck around that position so long, because it is a risk to set yourself up like that.
That's right. coollerz couldn't care less at that moment in time. There's no holds barred. He was literally going straight in, but look at this. He's using the piercing sight just to see exactly where Tox is going to go in terms of his route, and is just chasing behind him slowly. But he's got to be careful with that turret, because it will feed info, and the info is going to be fed. Tox is coming in, gets the first rail off, but with coollerz doing now, I think he's in a great spot just to kind of chill for the time being. Gets the frag anyway, just to make matters worse. And coollerz, that was a great job from him, considering the circumstances, and a nice clean sweep for him throughout the entire series.
Yeah, the scoreline, it might be a 3-0, but it was definitely closer than what the numbers alone might suggest. We had some pretty close games, a lot of opportunities for toxjq, just like this one just now. Could have very well gone the Terminator's favor as well, but in the end, it just fell apart once again. I really do feel like just watching Tox play, that aggression, just not really having the kind of discipline to sometimes know, I need to back off here. I just need to focus on the items, the weapons, rotation, getting control. The frags will come, but instead he just tries to brute force his way into the game. And when you're up against a player like coollerz, that can backfire so easily.
Yeah, the series score doesn't paint the picture, really, does it? I think that's the main talking point there. But even with the item control, you saw from there, like, you know, the second map, it was a lot better. He was contesting them a lot more, but sometimes he'd give up a little bit too early with a lot of the items. But it's just one of those things, really. But again, coollerz just playing out of his mind, always making himself sure, but he's at an advantageous situation. But yeah, there's some of the questionable plays you mentioned earlier, like when he was charging in for the Mega, or when he was just pushing too far, too deep, too soon, without the weapons in his arsenal. It's a little bit of a surprise. That definitely could have been his map if he didn't make some of those debatable plays.
Yeah, but on the other hand, of course, this wasn't just toxjq's loss, this was absolutely coollerz win as well. The man played phenomenal, just as we're used from him by now. Cementing himself, living up to the nickname as the king. This is going to be a very nice point injection for coollerz. Not that he really needs it, but he has been kind of going down the scoreboard a bit more after his phenomenal performance back at the Stage 2 finals. So I think it's great for a lot of people to see him finally, you know, the gears are revving up again. He's switching to a higher gear, the speed's increasing. These 64 points that he just earned himself today are no doubt going to help him out tremendously. So GG's, well played, coollerz.
Yeah, I feel like Tox still played like really well considering the circumstances. It's like I said before, you know, the series doesn't paint the picture. It's just Cooler was playing out of his mind, and it's so hard to play against someone that high caliber and to be on form at the same time. We kind of noticed it during the second map where Cooler was just playing out of his mind. I mean, Tox was just trying to make everything happen. He wasn't, you know, playing out of his comfort zone. He was still playing his style, but sadly, it just wasn't working out for him. But that's another match all said and done here. But stay tuned as we've got 3 more matches coming up soon.